Hi, welcome to the CAFMA Connect. I'm your host, Fire Chief Scott Freitag, and with me today, Training Chief Eric Merrill. Eric, thanks for coming back. This is the third episode of the Legato podcast, and the last time you were on, because you were the incident commander, so clearly in episode 2, we had you on and Captain Bushman to talk about that initial response, what it was like. And one of the things that we said on that podcast was that the training that we do here is on full display that night. And we talked a lot about Captain Bushman and his engine crew and the other crews at 50s going through the building. And we briefly mentioned that you had made a shift along with Prescott training to focus more on mid-rise, which would include hose management, which would include aerial operations, those types of things. So talk me through what led you, and working with Prescott, to shift gears a little bit to focus more on some of the mid-rise training.
Yeah, so great question, and it really kind of went back into when I became training captain in 2020. I really kind of did like a risk assessment in the area, and then provided like a needs assessment in the area of prioritizing what do we need to focus our training on moving forward in our training division. And at that time, coincidentally, we had a lot of, well, it was chaos because it was COVID, but at the same time, we had a lot of construction that was coming through the area, and our area allows for growth up and out, but mostly up. And I know that around 2021, we had the the Hilton Garden Inn and Suites downtown Prescott that was going up. And I just, I drove downtown quite a bit and noticed that, man, this is really lightweight wood construction. And then I look over here in this corner, here's another lightweight wood construction, here's another. So all we saw was this lightweight wood construction. And a lot of dialogue I was having with some of the crews was, what does this look like? Obviously not under construction necessarily if something happens, but when this is completely erected and there's occupancy in here, what does this look like for tactic strategies? Because predominantly what we've dealt with here is residential and very little commercial, but now you're dealing with multi-fams, multi-dwellings. Not to mention the risk that construction poses of being lightweight wood. So what I started doing is every month we do what's called school sessions, and I provide a bunch of different types of trainings, engine company, per rank type of stuff, and then MCSs and the like. And one thing,
MCS stands for
minimum company standards. Okay. Thanks for always catching me on that.
You're welcome.
And it's basically like a minimum standard of an operation, a tactical operation that we would perform on any given fire scene that we need to make sure that we're efficient in. So what I looked at is target hazards is what I identified them as, and I would do a monthly target hazard, and I started with the Finley Event Center. Only because I just gone to a concert there, I noticed that there's a couple things like, there's only fuel load really in this one location, but there's a huge life risk.
Big open space.
Yeah, exactly. But, they do a great job there. They have the prevention division did what they needed to do to make sure the standpipes are operable, that there's evacuation protocols. But it made me think like, well, where would the fuel load be? What does this look like? We were able to communicate with our community partners, and that's kind of the big thing that I want to get out of this.
Relationships.
100%. And the prevention division at that time, creating those opportunities for myself to go in, take some pictures, and talk with some of the maintenance people there, and found out that, if there was a fire in this area, this alarm goes off, and this exhaust system kicks on, but these doors open up, which opens up this huge flow path. Created some dynamics that I thought, man, this could be something that our crews would really need to know about. So it's little things like that we were putting out there monthly. So fast forward to now, it evolved into the apartment complex on Bob and Florentine. So we're watching this thing go up, and it's sandwiched. 53 is right next to it, but 58's not too far up the road either. So you're looking at this structure go up, and you knew they were going to build another couple complexes to it. And then more in the area, more in Prescott, that you're watching this happen, and it's happening at a speed faster than we can keep up with manpower and resources and hiring. So it's almost like, hey, we need to get ahead of this in terms of, while these are being erected, let's look at the construction, see what the bones are made of. So it kind of builds in our playbook, like how much time do we really have to operate and get done what we need to get done. Life safety is always our number one incident priority. And it always should be, but that means a collaboration between resources, ventilation, search, suppression. How does that all play now when we're dealing with the structure that we don't have the reps in fighting fire in?
Well, talk about hose management, because we say it, we know what we mean when we say it, but for the folks out there in our community, when you talk about training for hose management, what does that mean? What are you doing?
So a couple of things. So one, going back to the partnerships, just talking to some of the superintendents of the builds, our crews were able to tie in and actually take their, kind of walk, see what the layout is, the footprint is, and then start moving their hose around and seeing like, well, now what does this look like if we need, obviously one engine will supply the standpipe. How are we going to hook into this? How do we need to move? Where do we need to extend the hose to? Are there, exposed stairwells, exterior stairwells, things like that? Well, life safety we talked about. So how are we going to protect these, egress, ingress?
Right.
So we can get in. Most importantly, the civilians can get out. We got to protect them with suppression.
Right.
But then how do we get the hose up all these stairs and into these rooms? Can we, drop a line, take another line in, tag a standpipe into a stairwell, and then just feed that? What does that look like in these buildings? But we don't know that until we get into them.
Right, and you can deploy and use these things and use the high-rise packs, which are mid-rise packs, high-rise packs.
Or just hose packs at this point,
hose packs. Kathy, when Eric talks about the standpipe system, can you get a graphic from Eric that we could put in there to show, here's the standpipe, here's where the engine would be connected, here's where the firefighters would connect hose?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we can
Eric can provide that too.
Yeah, actually, we can get really creative. And one thing I'll say about this is when we started getting into this hose management, hose deployment, we started leaning into the talent in our organization. And I'll give a huge shout out, and a lot of credit goes to Jeff Kuykendall, Captain Kuykendall at 54, because he and Zach Ducharme and a lot of our good people interior.
Captain America,
exactly.
Congratulations, Captain America and wife.
Yes, I was going to say they're
beautiful young new baby.
They're no longer a family of two and their dog.
Right.
But yeah, it's cool that these people that had this passion for hose management, they'd been teaching kind of an involvement of nozzle forward and patent pending or trademarked or whatever, but they were teaching what works in our demographic. And they translated that to these mid-rises.
Okay.
So I could actually get you a video if you want, Kath, of so Captain Kuykendall actually filmed a couple videos where they actually show how they're deploying the 2.5 inch hose, and what does that look like with these mid-rises. And
is that the Minuteman?
Yes,
I already have
the 2.5 inch with the Minuteman. Cool.
Yeah, I think I already have that. So
we can put it in there.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is such an interactive. This is a training also in a podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm the one that got it ready for them. They filmed it. I put it up where you guys could get it. Yeah, so I think I have it.
So one of the things that, I was talking out at training today, the day that we're filming this, and we were talking about how we're a young department. And I want to clarify, we're not a young department in that, we're brand new, we've never been here before, and so all of our personnel are new. We're a department in transition currently. Because there was a time where the organization grew, a lot of people were hired, and a lot of those folks are starting to retire out. And so what we're seeing is a new crop of company officers, a new crop of battalion chiefs, which means new crops of engineers, new crops of firefighters coming in. And you saw that the night of the Legato fire. While some of the people in officers' positions have been with the agency for a while, they've only been company officers for a very short time, or battalion chiefs for a short time. And really that's where the training is on display, because we have people in new positions that are leadership roles. And when you get on a structure fire, they're the ones taking initial command and then passing the command to you and then making tactical decisions. And it's because of the training that we've been doing, the importance of the priority we put on training, especially with new folks. Yeah. We have a recruit academy in training right now. They're learning some of these things before they go into the field. And the thing about new recruits is your training has just started. The day you graduate the academy, your training has now started. Yep. And that training will last throughout your entire career until you actually retire. And I think that's one of I don't want to say it's a unique thing about our organization, but it is something that it's an expectation we have, is that you're continually learning. You're constantly looking around the environment that we're in, looking at the challenges that we may face, and then taking a step back and trying to develop what are the solutions to this. And some of it's just tabletop bench racing, right? And by that I mean company officer has the crew. They go out and look at something that's under construction. They may take a few pictures, and then they go back and they sit around the kitchen table and they just start throwing out. What if this happens? What about this thing over here? And it evolves. And then like Captain Kuykendall and firefighter Ducharme, who should be testing for engineer.
I think we'll
but hasn't.
slide his app in.
Just need
next
to
time.
put that in there. But they take that and say, hey, you know what? We can make a program with this. Here's some solutions we found, and we think this would be good for our organization. And so we're constantly looking for those opportunities and sending people outside for training to think more globally, especially down to places that do more high-rise firefighting than what we've done in the past.
So, and that's actually a really good point you bring up, because actually Captain Kuykendall, so when I went to FDIC last year, I actually had breakfast. I don't think he realized we were having breakfast, but I sat next to him and started talking as we were eating. But Daryl Liggins, he's a retired training captain from Oakland Fire. He's a big part of fire engineering and a lot of their podcasts. Very awesome instructor, very knowledgeable, but his what would you say, like his main expertise would be in that realm of like hose management, hose deployment in mid-rise, high-rise, commercial fires, things like that. And Jeff actually tied in with him, and then a couple of the resources from down the valley, and that's kind of what Jeff used to kind of help build some of these programs. But we have talented individuals in-house too.
We absolutely do.
He reached out to Captain Duplessis at 50 about some of this stuff that he had already worked on a little while ago.
And that's where Truck 50 is located, is at Station 50.
And we just have a lot of people that are just passionate about just training and evolving our training into things that are realistic to what we're dealing with today, like, again, my motivation for pushing training towards mid-rises and things we haven't dealt with. But he evolved that. Jeff evolved that into our quarterly training, which we partner with Prescott Fire to do. So that was really cool to see us. We changed our hose loads to Minutemen, how we evolved that into the 2.5-inch hose, how that evolved into hose management with these types of apartments. Back east, they'd be like garden apartments and garden styles. You probably had those in St. Louis too.
Yeah, absolutely, all over.
They all pose this interesting complexity, size. But for us, with the Legato fire especially, we're dealing with the construction. Was a giant complexity. With life safety always being number one, our life safety was more so from the exposures. And what did that look like?
Well, and again, when we look at life safety, that night, no lives lost, no one injured. Those are two huge things on a fire of this significance. Now, let's take a step back for a second and talk about truck company operations. So we've had Truck 50 for years, right? Now we have a replacement, we have an upgraded Truck 50, but we have it in place. And the way we've typically run it is it's engine 50 and then the truck goes out occasionally. My personal opinion is, and I think more people are buying into this, that our area has transitioned to where engine 50 looks a little bit more like a ladder tender, where typical calls you're going on the engine, but we're going to be using the ladder truck more because of the target hazards that we have in the area, especially around Truck 50. The other part of that is we're transitioning an engine company as soon as we get another ladder truck, which we're working on. We'll transition an engine company, yet to be determined which one. So whatever the rumors are, none of it's true. Depending. Just saying.
One of them's probably right.
One of them's probably right. But we're going to transition an engine company into a ladder, and that ladder company will become a full-time truck company. The reason we can do that with the ladder we're looking at is because it's a single axle. It's a potentially shorter ladder, lighter ladder.
A more versatile.
It makes it more versatile, which makes it a piece of equipment that we're comfortable running first out. But when we look at the target hazards we have, those are the types of units that we need specifically in this area. Now, when we look at garden apartments, look at anything really, there are some folks out there that are like, what do you need a 100-foot aero platform for? We don't have a 10-story building. You're right. That's a good thing that we don't have a 10-story building, because the ladder won't reach it. It goes up 100 feet, but you have to figure in the angle of the operation, and that's where garden apartments, for an example, you may have a 3-story garden apartment, but because of the offset with the carports out front, you're going to use most of that 100-foot aerial to get up and over a structure fire in that type of environment. And many times, like the Legato fire, even in one that doesn't take the entire structure to the ground, it's better to get those master streams up above and down on the fire, rather than if you're shooting from an engine on a deck gun, you're lobbing water up and over, as opposed to being up on top and very strategically being able to place the hose streams where they need to be. So we're in a position as an organization, as a community, where it is time for us to transition some of the ways that we've done things. And I say modernize, it's not really modernize, but shift the operations with the target hazards we have in the community, and that's exactly what we're doing today.
And we can't be reactive either. We try to do our best to get ahead of the game. Part of our quarterly training that we were preparing for, that was last fall.
Right.
So you see how we've been preparing for this for a few years now. Right. But then our quarterly training that we perform with Prescott Fire, you get 2 or 3 engine companies together, and everybody actually goes and physically applies tactics, to a skill. That was one thing that they were looking at. But even in the PowerPoint presentation, they had the blueprints and the plans of what Legato would look like. So that was even discussed. Right. And when you start talking about these types of structures, we're thinking and training for what happens when this is occupied. Legato, the incident itself, was an unoccupied structure, but you had way more dynamics with flow paths because it was an open, ventilated structure. But there's going to be collapse. And now you have life safety mitigated, early resource deployment, especially with striking a second alarm with the county and statewide mutual aid. But then the other thing now you have to consider is collapse. Which way is it going to collapse? How much damage is that going to cause, or can we manipulate that collapse to be protecting the exposures?
Well, and that's one of the things I don't know that the community realizes, is that part of the strategy is you and I sat there that night that you were looking at and talking about and talking with the 2 divisions and
ops chief
and the ops chief were, hey, can we place the hose streams in a way that not only protect from the flames, but could potentially direct the collapse inside the structure rather than coming out on one of the streets, whether it's Florentine or Main or whatever it is. We need to try to direct the where this thing's going to collapse. And I think ultimately we were pretty effective at that, because if you look at it, nothing collapsed outside of our zone. No. You set the zone with ops and divisions, and then they worked to ensure that anything that was gonna collapse or started to collapse, they had enough of a hose stream on it to help manage the direction it was gonna go.
And the other thing to think about too is we operate typically outside of a collapse zone. Collapse zone being 1.5 times the height of the structure. Right. When you have a 6-story structure with exposures, you can't get outside of that. So for them to work in the capacity in which they were working safely and efficiently, again, just bravo to all the divisions. Right. And everybody just having to head on a swivel. And a lot of that, again, goes back to the training that we've done for years. We beat a dead horse, for lack of better words, for good equine people, but on the ICS system. Right. And there's a reason why there's early deployment of resources, early setup of these divisions and groups, not really groups necessarily, but for these divisions to set up and do what they need to do. Right. I think you go back to the people that were on scene. Ryan Trask helps me teach at State Fire School with a class.
Captain Ryan Trask.
Captain Ryan Trask, yes, or Trasky, as we all know him as.
Right.
So he helps me teach a class with Bill Hickey, who's a BC with Prescott Fire. Chief Parr used to help teach that years ago before he got too big, and now he's
accreditation manager.
Yeah,
we have shirts for him.
He knows.
He loves it.
I think they're still sitting on the desk he used to work at, but. We have all these people that come in and are a part of these classes, but the title of that class is Fire Ground Command. Right. And it used to be Modern Fire Tech. It's evolved, but we're evolving our training even with what's the demand now, what's the needs assessment from training, but a lot of that class is building up your plans from residential to mid-commercial to a large strip mall or something as big as Legato or Home Depot. Like, we're just trying to break it down and simplify it. Set up your divisions, set up your groups, put your people in place and trust them to do their job. And having people on that scene that are training officers or people that I personally trained with or know what their passions are and skill set, it doesn't matter if your expertise is this certain area. I know that you're going to be able to pivot and you're going to do what needs to be done because you haven't slept on.
Well, and I think that's the other thing to highlight for folks is that it's not just training that we've received here or training that we have participated in. A lot of our folks actually they are the trainers. They're the training officers at Summer Fire School in September. They train at the different academies here. So they're the ones instructing the engineers academy or the captain's academy and simulations and those things. So our folks are constantly active, constantly working to train and hone their skills. Listen, we all know that a majority of our call volume is EMS, 68, 70% EMS. The number of fires we go on are fewer than in the past. However, they burn faster, they burn hotter, the chemicals are completely different. So the types of construction are different. So we're dealing with a completely different and more dangerous animal today. So we fight fewer of them, but they're more dangerous than they were.
Right.
And I just have to commend both the training staff at CARTA, Dustin, when he was in there, now accreditation manager, lucrative.
He's doing
move.
a great job with accreditation,
Yes.
I tell you. I feel very accredited, don't you?
It's very, I feel accredited. I do. Every time I talk to him, I feel more administrative.
Yeah. I text him a few GIFs or GIFs or whatever you call them today, just to keep him up because he's kind of in a dungeon right now.
Right.
Him and Chief Lucas working on this. So I try to keep him.
It's a dungeon we own.
Yeah.
But a lot of credit goes to our folks who put so much time and effort into sharpening and honing their skills on a regular basis, along with the training division and the stuff that they do. And I think opportunities that we afford people to go out and get different training and look at different things and see what fits our organization and community. So, we're doing this third episode on this because it seemed to flow from, hey, here's the fire response. And part of that is commending the actions of the personnel on scene because they did make such good tactical decisions right off that saved other structures, prevented injuries, and controlled that fire into the zone that it was going to be, to include controlling some of that collapse so that it collapsed in interior. And that's only done because of the commitment of our folks to the profession. This is not a job. We're looking for new firefighters right now. If you're looking for a job, this isn't it. If you're looking for a profession, then you should apply here because this is where you should be, and this is the profession that you should be in. So, Eric, thanks for coming on. I do want to point out one thing with the incident command that you talked about. First time in my 31 years in the service that a police chief came over, jumped in the back seat with us. I know we mentioned it in the first podcast. We mentioned it in the second podcast. We're mentioning it in the third. Just a huge shout out to Chief Bob Tyser with Prescott Valley PD. That made such a difference for us sitting in that command vehicle with Chief Tyser back there and being able to coordinate things with him directly. It just goes to his level of expertise and knowledge and his years of service as well. So Prescott Valley, great job on hiring an outstanding police chief. So with that, Kathy, anything to add before we cut this segment?
No, just that we're hiring. So go to our website. We're hiring for a number of things right now, including firefighter recruit. Yep,
cazfire.gov. Don't miss out. This is your opportunity.
We're going to hire a lot this summer and fall too.
I'm not putting a number on it other than a lot.
Yeah.
So, Eric, thank you again for being here to talk about training and all the wonderful things that our folks do here.
And thank you to all our partners. We took a lot of information from Mesa and Phoenix Fire, Oakland Fire, like I mentioned, but we had awesome people on that fire scene that they're in charge of the tactics. They killed it, but a lot of those guys being trainers themselves and having a passion for the lifestyle, the profession, like you're talking about.
And ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I come from another state, and there is no state like Arizona in the way that we work hand in hand together. If we're doing something that Phoenix likes, Phoenix will take a look at what we're doing. If Phoenix has something we think would help us, it's reciprocal throughout. And so the working relationship and the networks that we've built over the years with everybody down in the valley, up north in Flagstaff, Bullhead City, Kingman, wherever it is, we share, we work together, we train together, and it's vitally important. So thank you for pointing that out. To all of you out there, please don't forget to like and subscribe. We're going viral.